This video will show you how to replace the transmission mount on a Chrysler Town Country with a 3.8-liter engine. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment under your battery. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Let's start by disconnecting our negative battery terminal. We're using a 10 millimeter. Once you have that disconnected, just a quick inspection. Of course, we will be cleaning this before installing. For now, let's temporarily set it aside and we'll move along to the positive. 10 millimeter for this as well. Now we're going to start removing the battery hold down. We'll be using a 13 millimeter for the mounting bolt. Go ahead and remove the hold down and the bolt. We'll set them aside. Let's go ahead and remove that battery. Now let's focus on removing the battery tray. You're going to find that there's several places holding wiring harnesses down. You have one along the rearward side close to your master cylinder, and you'll find that you have two areas along the forward side. Now as far as my rearward side here, you can tell that this has already been damaged. Typically this would wrap around and hold it in place. What you would do is just use a small trim tool or even a flat blade screwdriver and then just pry it up and out of the area. So of course, just a quick inspection, make sure it's reusable. Otherwise, you just want to go ahead and replace it. I'll be replacing mine with a wire tie. Now we'll move along to the front, same process here. Just make my way under, gently pry up. There's that one. And the second one. Now there's going to be three pieces of hardware holding this down. We have one on the rearward side, close to the master cylinder. One all the way underneath our fuse panel here. This one's kind of hidden. And then we have a third one up along the front. Last one right in the front here. Let's remove that battery tray. Once you've removed that, we have this line that comes across and there's going to be a bracket up along the top. Just lift that right up and off of there. Now at this point, we're going to have to apply support directly underneath our transmission. Now as I bring my jack under here, I'm using a small chunk of wood as a spacer. It's also going to help protect the transmission. Now I'm just going to apply light support. Now that we have support under there, we're back inside the engine compartment. We're going to remove these two 18 millimeter headed mounting bolts. Now keep in mind, the transmission could still drop down a little bit. That is why we have support under it. Now we can start removing the bolts holding the mount to the body of the vehicle. Now you're going to find that you have two bolts up top out in the open and you'll have two bolts down along the side. One thing I would note about the side bolts is typically you can only get them out so far. After that, we'll have to make a quick adjustment and we should be able to slide those out of place. For each of those two side bolts, we'll be using a 16 millimeter. One note I would make about this is you don't want to try to use a ratcheting wrench in here. Once it gets all the way out to the end, your wrench might get stuck. Just go ahead and use an open end wrench if necessary. There. Now let's move along to the next one. This one's a little bit more difficult to gain access to. Now, as you can see, this bolt will not come out of here yet. That's okay. Let's continue on to the upper hardware next. For the upper hardware, we're also using a 16 millimeter. All 4 of these bolts will look the same. You do not need to worry about mixing them up. Should be able to wiggle this. Let's see if we can get that bolt out of the way. There it is, friend. Now, prior to installing any brand new part, of course we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. We're going to clean along the body of the vehicle and, of course, on the mount along the top of the transmission. Once it's clean, just a thorough inspection. Make sure nothing's rotted or weak. Now it's time to install the brand new transmission mount. As you remember, the rearward lower bolt is the hardest one to gain access to, remove, and reinstall. So that's where we're going to start. Let's get this mount in place here. Now, as far as that rearward bolt, we want to try to get this bolt into position. I'm going to take the head of the bolt and slide it in towards this metal bracket. There's a small groove in there that this should want to slide into. Same thing for the forward lower bolt. Upper hardware. Now we can snug these up. Let's start with the lower hardware first. Now, of course, I'm going to make sure those are nice and snug. I'm using a longer wrench for this. It's pretty much impossible to get a torque wrench down in this area. Now let's move along to the upper hardware. Now, as I mentioned, it's pretty much impossible to torque the lower hardware, but up along the top, I'm going to be torquing each of these 2 bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Double check to make sure that mount is properly secured to the body of the vehicle. Now, at this point, we're going to carefully raise or lower the transmission so it's aligned. As you can tell, I need to raise my transmission up to this point, and we'll continue on with the next 2 mounting bolts. As for the upper hardware, when you go to install this, we want to make sure it's going in straight up and down with the lower bracket area. Now, as you can tell on my application, things have shifted a little bit, so I'm going to have to make an adjustment. We definitely don't want the bolts coming in at an angle, which could cause damage. For this, I'm just using a pry bar. I'm going up against my mount and up against the lower bracket. At this point, I should be able to pry in one direction or the other as necessary. Now that they're both started in, I'm going to snug them up and then I'm going to torque these to 50 foot-pounds. At this point, we've torqued all the hardware holding the mount in place. Let's remove support from under the transmission and we can continue on up in this area. Let's make sure we resecure this line up along the top of the mount. Just slide that right into place. There's no mounting hardware for that. Let's get ready to install the battery tray. The battery tray is going to sit down along this area and sit over this. So of course we do have our bracket in place already. Once you have it in place, we can continue on with the hardware. We're going to start on all pieces of hardware before tightening any. We have our mounting nut. This goes right in here. Onto our two mounting bolts. One in the front. And then we have one tucked into this side area here. Now I have them all started in, I'm going to go ahead and snug them up. After confirming that's secure, let's continue on to our electrical wiring harness. Now we're going to have to secure this in 3 different areas. As you remember on my application, my rearward piece of hardware was damaged, and I mentioned I'm going to be using a wire tie. So I'm just going straight through there with my wire tie, and of course I'll trim off any excess once it's nice and tight. Now as we move along the forward side here, we have 2 mounting points. Line them up, press them straight down, make sure they're secured. Once again, if they break, just go ahead and use a wire tie. Just flex these out of the way. Let's continue on with the installation of the battery next. As for the battery, we're sliding it down into place. Once it's rested fully down, we're going to continue on by pressing it towards the driver's side. That's going to lock in the driver's side, and now we have the mounting point along the passenger side, closest to the engine. When we install this, we're going to take it in the proper orientation. We're sliding it down into position here. We have our mounting bolt, start it in, snug it up. Let's make sure we press that all the way up against the battery. Be aware of any pinch points. Now, as I mentioned, for the installation of the battery cables, we're going to make sure that we clean the battery posts and each one of the terminal ends. I have a battery brush. You can also use some sandpaper if necessary. Just a quick scuffing here. We want to make sure it's a nice mating surface there. After cleaning the post, let's continue on to each of the terminal ends. When installing the battery terminal ends, we start with the positive. We'll make sure it's nice and snug, and then repeat the process for the negative last. $10mm, we'll make sure this is nice and tight. Okay, right there is bottomed out. Just a tiny bit further there. Okay, bottomed out. Tiny bit further. And it's secure. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our vehicle's transmission mount. The next thing you want to do is hop in the passenger compartment. You're going to have your foot on the brake while the vehicle's running and run the vehicle through each one of the gears. We want to listen for any audible clunking noises or odd vibrations coming from in this area. Assuming everything's good, go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.